So, I recently, in the year of our Lord 2025, got into Five Nights at Freddy's. In between the time of the Secret of the Mimic announcement and the first trailer, I was very ill and could not sleep a single wink when I discovered a video called FNAF Lore to Sleep To, and then I was cooked. I went in wanting to make a video about how, in retrospect, the location of FNAF 4 didn't have to be Fredbear's, and I thought it was kind of weird that it was such an accepted fact despite evidence that makes that conclusion a little odd. Thinking that I could cook, I gathered my friends into a voice chat, thinking surely we could stumble upon something genius by rubbing our collective brain cells together and consuming this information fresh. Except we kept going in the same unsolvable circles as everyone else, naturally. Only, we didn't land on the usual community sticking points. Instead... Where is Elizabeth?
So where is Elizabeth? Where is Elizabeth? Where is Elizabeth?
Where's Elizabeth in FNAF 4?
Where is Elizabeth? Is she
Did Elizabeth die first?
Where the fuck is Elizabeth?
Where the fuck is Elizabeth? Where is she? Also, where's Elizabeth?
Touche. Also, where the fuck is Elizabeth?
Here, this is the connection. Vengeful spirit to crying child to where the fuck is Elizabeth? Yeah, so where is Elizabeth? This is a sticking point sometimes, but the Great Scoop is widely regarded as something less important to place, since we know so much about the Elizabeth to baby pipeline. There are just more important mysteries to solve. But when the fun times are made is important because it will and can change the motivations of the killings. It also changes the context behind, like, every death later in the series. So, potentially very important. Now, I know you've seen the title. How could Secret of the Mimic possibly give any more evidence to Elizabeth dying first? There are two main things. This substance and characterization. Let's track them in order. The costume manor is ran on, lava? No, but like seriously, this strange molten substance is somehow producing enough energy for a factory to run on. Groundbreaking thermal energy for the 70s, if I may say. But that's not quite all, is it? From the second the game dropped, the community was abuzz about this potentially being remnant-based energy, which we know from both the books and Special Delivery is an absolute unit of a power source. It checks a lot of boxes for being remnant. It's from recycled toys and machines that likely filled with the memories and emotions we know make up remnant. It's a molten metal, which is the same state it's represented in as in the books, and it has these crazy unrealistic energy outputs. The only problem is how and why would Edwin know about remnant and be using it? Long and short answer, he probably had no idea. From the Mimic itself, we can pretty easily pick up that while he's smart, his most brilliant moments are kind of lucky. Right answer, wrong equation. This is likely to be a mix of intended thermal and unintentional remnant energy. However, as cartoonishly evil as William is, just taking a look at the fun times, his technological genius isn't so finicky, and if you're willing to use the books for some level of characterization, he's even quite the scientist dedicated to studying remnant. You know, the guy who moves into Edwin's house and obtains his factory, yeah, that guy now has access to a place ran on remnant before the first Freddy's location. Huh. That surely has no knock-on effects that might either set things in motion or give far greater access to a man who is not stable. So, how does this help any kind of argument that the fun times were far earlier than we may believe? That lies on what the introduction of Remnant might do to a company like Fazbear as it's characterized. We have known since the first game Fazbear is a horrible company with an absolute disregard for human life. But there's been this sort of habit of ignoring the evil of the company by offloading all antagonistic roles onto William Afton, and more recently, the Mimic. But it's because of this most recent game we know even in '79, Fazbear was no better than it is by the time of feeding night guards to the animatronics in FNAF 1. Do you think there's anything they wouldn't do to improve their bottom line? The kind of things they would cover up and the people they would hurt for a leg up? I mean, they sent whole teams of people to die at the hands of the Mimic. What motivation could William possibly have to build the fun times? If not for Remnant to put his son back together. Money. Remnant is energy. Free, intense energy, at the cost of a little strong emotions. Energy that could be found and studied at Murray's Costume Manor. It's always been about greed. Fazbear as a company, the sheer concept of this heartless corporation has been just as much of a villain and even more of a consistent character than William on his own. From running Edwin into the ground through a slow and torturous process of poaching talent and driving him to bankruptcy, to obsession over putting back his children, but not treating them well, seeing them more as possessions and symbols, and then the implications of seeking immortality in the books. Also, whatever consumerist hellscape is going on in the Pizzaplex even after William's death. It's greed, all the way down. The fun times were a remnant farm. You may say, but Beeb, the first Freddy's location can't have been earlier than '83, and it would have had to be already closed for Baby to be around because of what Hand Unit says. So how could she possibly be dead before Crying Child, who dies in '83? Very good question. The answer is no. It doesn't need to be closed for Baby to exist. Reminder that Hand Unit is giving you the rundown on your current workplace. The rental agency is filling the gap that Freddy's left in its closure. Why would the company introduction tell you about the failed restaurant of Baby's Pizza World instead of the place you're currently employed? This could all go along fantastically with the popular theory Remnantplex by She's Always Nervous, a fantastic bundle of evidence about how the Pizzaplex is run with Remnant, as well as the canon information we have in FNAF AR, May It Rest in Pieces. If Fazbear's is canonically using Remnant, there is a chance that it could be using it on larger scales, like with the theory of Remnantplex, and it could have been using it for a lot longer than we think. Now, do I think I'm right? Probably not. But it does fill this massive gap where implications exist. Elizabeth is astoundingly missing from FNAF 4, despite her room existing. Now that we have all but a confirmation that Midnight Motorist is the Afton house, if Crying Child is the runaway, then according to most, she's alive. So it's weird that she has no relevance under that interpretation. Elizabeth dying first, despite evidence to the contrary, just didn't fit into the current agreed upon story the fandom has latched onto. It feels simple and satisfying to to say William flew off the handle because of the death of his young child and sent an already off-kilter man into a spiral. But what if we're wrong? It's FNAF. I think we need to be open to playing around with mysteries left behind and different interpretations. What has all been expected as fact with counter-evidence. We know so little about this series and its happenings, and Scott has made more than one reference to how deeply unsolved FNAF 4 is compared to the rest of the series. While very, very little is confirmed, we do know that FNAF 4 is this sticking point of nothing but mysteries. There's so little we know about it. Everything from Elizabeth mysteriously missing, to psychic friend Fredbear, to evidence that the crying child is the vengeful spirit, despite it being also completely nonsensical for him to be the vengeful spirit. I think in terms of trying to theorize, nets should be cast wide, not tall. If we keep building on assumptions that might not be right, then we could just be getting further from anywhere we want to be. So, is it a sure thing that Elizabeth died first and the fun times were built earlier than we thought and they were made to farm Remnant and Vazbears has always been killing people? No. But where's the fun in that?